Well, most doctors who work in actual hospitals and medical institutions have to show up to the office. We know that employees are more productive and more efficient when they are working in an in-office environment.
All right, let's talk about what just happened on live TV, because honestly, this could be one of the biggest media fails of the year. Michael Strahan, ex-NFL star turned Good Morning America host, thought he was about to score a political win. He dressed up. He came in with his notes. Cue the dramatic music and go face-to-face with Karoline Leavitt, Trump's sharp press secretary. Spoiler alert, it didn't go as planned. Now, Strahan may have tackled quarterbacks in his football days. But in this interview, he got verbally crushed, outplayed, outsmarted, and sent home early. Karoline Leavitt didn't just handle the attack. She flipped it, used it, and made him look like a rookie in the wrong game. And the best part? She barely even raised her voice. So, what really happened? How did Strahan's gotcha turn into his own fail? Let's break it down. It all started with a question Strahan probably thought would trap her. He mentioned President Trump's plan to cut federal jobs by offering a huge buyout to 2 million government workers.
We want to start with the administration's offer to buy with a mass buyout to federal employees out there. How many do you hope will take it, and by what percentage does the president want to downsize the federal workforce?
Now, if you're a mainstream media host, you assume this makes the administration look cold and heartless. You think it screams anti-worker, authoritarian, or some other scary label. But Karoline, she was ready. She didn't dodge. She didn't hesitate. She leaned in and explained clearly. This wasn't a mass firing. It was a voluntary buyout. That's right. Voluntary, generous even. If people wanted out, they'd get 8 months of paid leave to leave. Not a pink slip, not a forced exit. A choice, a well-paid one. And why? Because, as she said, only 6% of federal employees in Washington, D.C. actually show up to the office.
This is another promise made and kept by President Trump. He told the American people on the campaign trail that he was going to make our federal government more efficient and productive. And it is a fact that only 6% of the federal workforce here in Washington, D.C. actually shows up to the office.
Let that sink in. You're paying for the lights, the heat, the marble floors, and the huge federal buildings downtown, and 94% of those workers are logging in from their couches, sipping coffee in pajamas, and acting like a morning Zoom call. Counts as public service. Leavitt called it out for what it is, taxpayer-funded laziness. And Strahan, he didn't know where to look. She reminded everyone that America's real workers, the teachers, the cops, and the nurses, show up every day. They don't get to zoom in on their jobs. They're not paid for staying home. So why should unaccountable federal bureaucrats get to?
Class Americans, our teachers, our nurses, our law enforcement officers who keep this economy working, show up to the office every single day, and President Trump expects that federal employees do.
Now, here's where Strahan tried to fight back. You could see his mind working. He was like, okay, but what about doctors and scientists?
Is there any concern that we risk losing people with years of experience like doctors and let's say science?
Like that would be the trick that caught her. But come on, doctors working from home. Karoline didn't even flinch. She said what everyone was thinking. You can't check a patient over FaceTime. You can't do lab experiments on your kitchen counter. That's not real science. That's sitcom science.
Well, most doctors who work in actual hospitals and medical institutions have to show up to the office. We know that employees are more productive and more efficient when they are working in an in-office environment.
Her response was harsh in the best way. This wasn't about being mean. It was about reality. The administration was simply saying, if we're paying you with taxpayer money, we expect you to actually show up and do your work. Surprising, right?
His order, as presented in that memo last night, directs federal agencies to come up with a return-to-work policy for their agencies. And if federal bureaucrats in this city don't like that, well, guess what? They can resign from their positions, and this administration is offering them 8 months of pay. They will be paid through September just to simply resign from their positions. If 5 to 10% of the federal workforce resigns, it will save taxpayers tens of billions of dollars. dollars. And so, look, we want people to return to work. We have beautiful federal office buildings here in Washington, D.C. that American taxpayers are paying for. They should be used. That's what the American people deserve.
And just when Strahan was trying to bounce back from that blow, he threw one last Hail Mary. He mentioned federal aid programs, suggesting the Trump administration was stopping help for the vulnerable, the underserved, and the communities who need it most. Classic emotional move, the how dare you angle.
Let's get to the funding part. The White House putting a freeze on federal assistance program. The federal judges put the freeze temporarily on hold, saying the government itself doesn't have the full scope of the programs that are going to be impacted. So what's your response to that?
But Karoline, she completely burned that story, and she made it very clear this wasn't some random budget-cutting spree. It was a review, a smart temporary pause to go through the endless maze of government funding and ask a simple question. Is this money actually doing anything useful?
As I addressed in my first press briefing yesterday, this is a temporary pause on federal assistance and grants so that the Office of Management and Budget here in the Executive Office of the President can review all federal assistance that is going out the door.
Because here's the point. This isn't about taking away food stamps or cutting grandma's Medicare. Karoline stressed again and again that essential programs, Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, and SNAP benefits stayed the same. Business as usual. What they were pausing was ridiculously wasteful nonsense.
And as I repeatedly stated yesterday, individual assistance such as Medicare payments, Social Security benefits, welfare, food stamps, and Medicaid assistance will not be impacted by this federal pause. So the American people should not worry. If they're receiving individual assistance from the federal government, they will continue to receive.
Like, check this, a government-funded study on shrimp running on treadmills. No, that's not a joke. You paid for that. Karoline explained it like a receipt after a terrible restaurant visit. She said, "We're not going to keep spending money on programs the current administration isn't even running, like day training sessions and Green New Deal legacy projects. Why fund policies the president already canceled? That's not kindness. That's madness." And Strahan, he was finished.
So there will be no more federal funding for DEI programs. There will be no more federal funding for the Green New Deal, which is an order from the previous administration that President Trump has rescinded. It would make no sense for American taxpayers to pay for policies that this administration is no longer implementing.
The man looked like he wanted the ground to swallow him whole. But wait, it gets even better. He reached into his back pocket for one final zinger. The rollout of the freeze had apparently temporarily disrupted the Medicaid portal. This, he thought, was his chance to finally corner her. A technical glitch, a sign of chaos, panic everywhere, except...
Well, the Medicaid system was disrupted across the country yesterday. Online portals, they went down in response to this freeze action. So should that not have happened? And is that a sign of a chaotic rollout?
The portal was fine. It got fixed in minutes. Karoline faced it directly. No dodging, no excuses. Yes, they knew about it. Yes, it was quickly fixed. The system was not just working, it was working better than before. The whole question made him look uninformed, desperate, and sloppy.
Oh, absolutely not. And I would like to address that. We were made aware of that immediately, and we amended the problem immediately. The Medicaid program is back up and running.
And as she calmly explained that spreading misinformation only causes more panic, Strahan sat there, awkward smile, barely nodding. His whole attack had been shown as weak. Honestly, it felt like watching a high school debate coach tear apart. A confused freshman who didn't do the homework. And if you thought that was the end, nope. Strahan still tried one more shot. This time he used the Kennedy card. He mentioned Karoline Kennedy's public disapproval of RFK Jr., Trump's nominee, for Secretary of Health and Human Services. He even quoted her calling him dangerous and intentionally misinformed.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Let's go to another topic. We have a lot to cover here. President Trump's nominee for Secretary of Health and Human Services has his confirmation hearing this morning. Well, his cousin, Karoline Kennedy, she's speaking out against him, calling him, quote, unqualified with dangerous and willfully misinformed views on vaccines, and that he is a predator. And what's your response?
Karoline's response was a mic drop. She didn't just defend RFK Jr. She supported his whole record. She highlighted his decades of work in public health, environmental justice, and scientific transparency. She reminded everyone that Kennedy wasn't some fringe conspiracy theorist. He was a man with legal victories, published research, and a long history of holding powerful institutions accountable.
I would reject those comments fiercely. RFK Jr. is widely respected. He's a great man who has dedicated his life to public service and to research. He is pro-science, and he is committed to making this country healthy again.
She said what many Americans already know. This country is one of the richest yet unhealthiest in the world. And if someone wants to ask tough questions about that, maybe we should listen. And by the way, if you disagree with RFK Jr, fine. But calling him dangerous just because he challenges broken systems, that's not journalism, that's cowardice. And Karoline wasn't having it.
He campaigned alongside President Trump, and they spoke that motto to tens of millions of Americans across the country who clearly believed in it. America is one of the richest yet unhealthiest countries in the world.
At this point, Strahan had nothing left. He came in hoping for a viral gotcha moment. What he got instead was a masterclass in calm, facts, and confidence.
Look at our obesity rates, our autism rates. We should be performing far better. Our people should be much healthier. And that's all that RFK Jr. is trying to do. And so President Trump stands strongly behind him, and we look forward to watching him shine on Capitol Hill today in his confirmation hearing, just like all of the other nominees that President Trump has appointed to their respective agencies and departments.
And the internet, oh, you better believe they noticed. So, what's the real lesson here? The media elite dislike people like Karoline Leavitt, not because she's wrong, but because she doesn't back down. She doesn't play their game. She won't be trapped by loaded questions or twisted stories. And when the spotlight is on her, she shines not with drama or spin, but with facts, logic, and a strong sense of purpose. And that drives them crazy because they're used to conservatives who flinch, apologize, and play defense. Karoline doesn't do that. She flips the table and makes you explain your nonsense. She takes gotcha questions and turns them into teaching moments. That's why Trump picked her. That's why the base loves her. And that's why she keeps winning these debates. Because truth, clarity, and courage beat smug media theatrics every time. So yeah, Michael Strahan may have been a legend on the football field, but in political debates, Karoline Leavitt just sacked him for a